Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people, where we speak about critical issues in the blindness community and all other issues from across the universe and galaxy. Today I found today's guest simply by scrolling through Facebook, and somebody by the name of Goddess was posting episodes about her podcast. When I looked into her background, I knew that I had to interview you. So why don't you basically just walk through the whole life story? And as I always like to say, I would say you can start your journey, before you became blind and how you became blind, and then the person that you are now, and everything, everything in between and around. And, just basically, as I say, tell me everything you want me to know and don't tell me anything you don't want me to repeat. So basically, walk through your whole life story, and I'll mute my microphone. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. So my name is Goddess Johnson, and I am originally from Chicago, Illinois. My life before was one of coming into the world with a lot of obstacles starting off. My childhood wasn't like many. I am one of four children, and I was born to a single mother who suffered with mental illness and a drug addiction. So growing up in the south side of Chicago in one of the worst projects there, Parkway Gardens, is where I come from, which a lot of people know today as Old Block, which is not known for a lot of good. My mom was incarcerated when I was 7 years old for capital murder, which led to me and my brothers and sisters being put in the system. Um, Pretty much, we everything you can think about when you hear about, children being put in the system, we kind of endured from the physical abuse, verbal abuse, just the treatment of not feeling apart or belonged. Me and my brothers and sisters were split up once I was about 10, and me and my sisters stayed together, and my brothers were in a different placement. Um, there was various abuse from sexual abuse and physical abuse. I was in probably, I would say I can remember roughly about 11 to 15 different placements between the age of 7 up until about 10, in which led to me reporting these things. And then, of course, is your word against theirs. So not being believed, which turned me into an angry um, child. So then I began to act out when they would put me in these places, which got me placed to where I was not able to be placed in a home. So I was in a group home. So at about 12, I kind of got tired of it. I felt like if I was getting treated like this, then I was better off on my own. So I left, ran away, kind of got reunited back with my brothers because they had left as well, but joined a gang, and we kind of lived that lifestyle because for us, it was belonging to something. It was family. There was a lot of anger being felt, just left out here. So that kind of led to that lifestyle, which I lived until I was about 15 years old, which at that time, the only reason why I guess it turned around is because due to being involvement in some related activities, it led to my brothers being arrested. And later, my brothers were charged as juveniles. As juveniles, they were charged as adults and received 44 years. So now that was the only kind of family I had. And with them being gone, I hadn't been in school since the sixth grade. I was like, what I'm going to do? So that was kind of my turning point. I reached out to the caseworker. I kind of said I wanted to get myself together. I need to be able to do something. So I kind of did just that. I made it back. They got me back. I had a test. I ended up testing and getting placed in scoring enough to be in as a junior in high school, even though I hadn't been in school since the sixth grade. So I was able to go to school. I went to school during the summer. He ended up graduating early. At the same time I graduated, I was able to be emancipated. And I went into the military, and that was kind of like the turning point in my life, because I literally went into the military because I was like, I needed housing and I needed a foundation, and they were giving a sign-on bonus, and it was going to be free housing, and that was the thing to do for me at the time. So that's why I initially went into the service. but being able to gain so much more. I served for 10 years. I got out the military. I was actually in Fort Hood, Texas. I ended up going into nursing. I was so proud because I was actually the first in my family to kind of break that cycle of incarceration. I was the first to graduate high school, go on into the military, which later led to me being the first to graduate college and go on to pursue my career of being a nurse and never ever ending up going to jail. And so I was happy. I was on my way. I was living my life. I had started my family. I had met my, we were boyfriend and girlfriend when I was 19 years old. So I ended up starting my own family. I had my sister and we were our family. That's all we had, but we were a family. I became a mom. And so I was on my way and everything to me was doing good. You know, I was still able to communicate with my brothers who behind the walls and being able to be that inspiration and just keep them going. I was a nurse. I worked overnight. I worked the third shift from 7 at night to 7 in the morning. My sister had followed in my footsteps. She was in nursing school, about to graduate. She actually worked the third shift as well in the admitting department overnight, and that was where she worked. Um, I went to work on this particular day. At this point, I was 28 years old. I went to work thinking it was any other day, did my shift, got off of work. My sister, we went to pick up my niece who was in an overnight daycare and got on the road, you know, like any other morning, headed home. You know, my routine was going home, you know, shower, and then I was up because I was also in my last term of school because I was about to graduate with my master's. My goal was to be a nurse practitioner and be able to run my own office. Um, and that didn't happen. I remember getting in the car and I remember us driving, and we were having a conversation because my sister made good pancakes, and I was telling her that I wanted her to make me some pancakes. And the next thing I remember is waking up and it being totally dark, and I couldn't move, and I just felt really disoriented. And I remember just hearing the voice of, you know, Miss Johnson, and I could just hear, and that's when I began to be told that, you know, I was involved in a tragic car accident, and as a result of that, I was actually coming out of coma that I had been in for 7 months, and as a result of that, I was left totally blind, and I lost my sister and my niece in that accident. So being in that state and hearing this information that I couldn't even process because I couldn't physically do anything because I was coming out of this coma state. So hearing these words and not being able to really respond led to the next 2.5 years of my life as I went into a skilled rehabilitation unit to go through the therapies to learn how to walk again, talk again, and have the mobility back. There was the adapting to when I went through that whole process of my vision, there was really nothing that was given to me as a resource. So I was just like, okay, at the end of the therapy, when I got my mobility back, my speech back, upon walking out of that rehabilitation unit, now needing assistance because I can't see, and just feeling like my life was like over during that whole process, you know. And the first time I was able to, my son, after all this time has happened, and now here he is, and I'm being taken, getting out of a car, and I can't explain to my son like why I can't walk from the car to the door, you know, just having to deal with that, which was something I didn't want to deal with. I thought that I wished I would have died in the accident because this was like a death sentence, like some twisted joke. And even when I returned home after everything, I remember not wanting to come out my room, not wanting to get out the bed, not wanting to bathe, not wanting to eat. Like I just felt like, what was the point? And I went through that because my goal was to try to take my life, and I would get mad because I would still wake up every morning. And then this went on for about an entire month, just back and forth, just not wanting to starve myself because I didn't want to accept being blind. And it led to, I ended up the last attempt, I took some pills and went to the hospital. And that next, when they discharged me, I ended up having to stay for 3 days and bringing me home. And I remember being in the bed and my son coming in from school and coming in my room. And in this point, my son kind of came over and he put his hand on me. He said, "Mom, it's okay. I'll help you." And it was in that moment that I felt that child that I was at one point, and my mom wasn't there because my mom was incarcerated, and I knew what it felt like not to have a mother present. And immediately it kind of woke me up, I guess you could say, and I began to fight. I began with everything in me. If nothing else, this was my family. This is all that I felt I had. And if I had to be blind, I was going to learn how to live this life. And that's kind of what started for me. I didn't know about resources or schools for the blind in my beginning. I self-taught with the help of my son, kind of learned how to live my life without sight. Which in this time, not using a cane, not having a cane, just learning how to navigate around my house, learning how to cook, learning how to do my clothing with the help of different techniques of that's what I did. And I slowly began to kind of gain a sense of it, kind of independence, but still struggles because now I was no longer, I didn't feel independent. I wasn't the breadwinner, and I began to go through, verbal abuse that I began to receive from my child's father, because now to him, I was like a burden. He would often refer to me as having another child he had to take care of. And, I began to become a victim of domestic violence. And it was something I felt like I had to take because who would want me? I'm blind, I just felt like I had to deal with it, and still try to learn how to not feel like I was this burden. So I fought extra hard to learn how to become independent. And it was upon realizing that I was pregnant with my second child, which I found out after an incident where I was abused, and I ended up having to go to the hospital. And that's when I found out I was pregnant. And not only pregnant, I was pregnant with a girl. And it was something about finding out that I was pregnant, which I wasn't happy like most people because I'm blind. Like I remember feeling like, why would this happen? I had my son, but I knew what my son looked like and I had adapted. And now here I am. I'm going to have another baby and I can't see. So it was like, it wasn't the joy. It wasn't the happiness like most people get. It was like immediate, just I was just depressed and I was sad, but it was like I didn't want to have a daughter or have a girl and her to see weakness, or her to see a mom that was, letting these things happen. So that was actually my strength. Within that time, during that pregnancy, I kind of built myself up to prepare myself to leave because I wanted better for myself. Regardless of being blind, I felt like I didn't deserve what I was going through. So I used that time to plan, and I had a good friend that told me about an eye institute in Florida that was like number one for research. And I just remember, okay, I didn't know nobody in Florida, but I needed to get out of my situation. So I had my daughter. That was one of the most happiest and sad days of my life, because to give birth to a child, and now when they go to put her in front of you, I couldn't see her, and people are telling me, oh, she looks just like you. And I just remember just a bittersweet moment, but it still allowed me to know, like, I wanted better. So with the help of my very good friend, she was actually a very close friend, like family, to me. After I had my daughter, after she was cleared, after her um, initial checkup, I left. I took my son and we relocated to Florida. And that's actually where I say it began my journey into me realizing that it took me to lose my physical sight to gain vision. When I got to Florida and got settled and going to Baskin Palmer Eye Institute, I remember my first time going and them telling me, they can't make any promises, but I can go through some different research trials and we can see how that goes and things like that. But for me, I just wanted to try because I still didn't want to accept that I was going to have to live the rest of my life like this. But Florida also introduced me to rehabilitation therapy. I found out about a school for the blind, coming from an appointment with my daughter, who was my sighted guide at the time. I didn't even know what a sighted guide was, and she was just three, by this time, a young one. And so I was with her, and one of the drivers, the Uber drivers, was like, "Oh, I just picked up someone from your school that y'all school." And I was like, "What school?" She was like, "The school for people like you." I said, "What do you mean, people like me?" And she was like, "People who can't see." And so for me, I never knew that no schools. I didn't even know anything about schools for the blind or anything like that. And she gave me the information. And that next day I contacted them, and it was the Lighthouse of Central Florida. And I remember them scheduling me to come in for my appointment. And I remember coming in that next day, and it was like walking into a new world. I remember going through with the program's director when I first heard about assistive technology, like their computer systems, and they talk, and these machines, and learning about Braille and independent living skills. And I'm walking in the kitchen and they have microwaves that talk. It was like, what in the world? And I remember feeling like, okay, you know what I'm saying? And I was happy because I wanted to jump right in, because it was like, okay, this is what I needed. And I did just that. I went through my VRT training, vocational rehabilitation training. I went through my assistive technology, my Braille, orientation and mobility, where I learned how to navigate using a cane. I remember going to the bus station, getting on the bus for the first time, being blind. I just remember feeling empowered. And after we completed the course, the training, you have a graduation. And at my graduation, I remember I was approached that Friday before our graduation was on that Saturday by Mr. Kyle Johnson of the Lighthouse of Central Florida. He was the director, and he said, "Goddess, we would like you to be the speaker for the graduation." I'm like, I was like, okay, no problem. And he told me they were going to have a special guest. And that guest was going to be Lucille O'Neal, who is the mother of basketball star Shaquille O'Neal. And I was like, what? And I was like, really? And he was like, yes, because a lot of people didn't know that she had a visual impairment. She has a visual impairment. And she had just published her book, Walk Like You Have Somewhere to Go. So I remember thinking, wow, I had never met nobody that was like close to a celebrities, and I loved basketball. So I thought it was just like real cool. So at the graduation, that was my first time telling my story on my journey, and how proud I was to be graduating and going on to pursuing. Now I was originally pursuing my nursing to get my master's, but I had decided to pursue for vocal rehabilitation therapy because I wanted to be a teacher, just like the teacher I had at the school for the blind, because I felt like she empowered me. So I gave my speech. I got a standing ovation, and that was my first time. Lucille O'Neal, she came up to me after the ceremony and gave me a hug and told me how I inspired her. And I remember feeling like, do you know who you are? And you saying I inspire you. And she said she wanted to have me on her radio station and do an interview with me. And that was the first time I started speaking. And from there, I did just that. I accepted a scholarship. I got to go to the University of Massachusetts distance learning program. And I ended up obtaining my master's in visual rehabilitation therapy, and I ended up being a teacher at the same school I graduated for 3 years. And I had just a love for it because I worked with everyone from voc rehabilitation to the transition high school students during the summer to older blind. But it was something about, they would always say, for me, I wanted to show the confidence. I wanted to still show the boldness, and I was noticing working with the kids who were blind, especially the young adults. I found that they were in high school, they were having those same feelings, the girls, like I did, which led to me being in the relationship that I was, because I didn't feel. And I was like, no, you're beautiful, you deserve. And I would pour into them. So that's kind of what got me into wanting to do and show confidence and beauty even through blindness. And I met a very good friend at my very first ever convention, which was in 2019. I met Crystal Allen, and she's the founder of Eyes Like Mine Incorporated out of Newark, New Jersey. And she began to tell me about a pageant that she does every year that is for blind women. And I was like, a beauty pageant for blind women? And she was like, yeah. So I was like, okay. And I was like, I started off, I was like, well, I'm not your pageant type, but I don't mind, helping out and volunteering. And that's what I did. I started helping out with the organization, being on the background, planning for the pageant. And that led me into her asking me if I would participate in modeling in a fashion show. And I was like, a fashion show? I was like, okay. And she was like, it was for blind, visually impaired women and sighted women. So I was like, wow, that's powerful. And it was in New York. And so I ended up doing a walk video, which I didn't know what I was doing. She was like, just get your cane, put on all black and walk in a line. I said, okay. So I did that, and that landed me in New York City and participated in the very first ever inclusive fashion show featuring blind, visually impaired, and sighted women under the Not My Eyes. And that made like the news, and magazines were out there, and it was such a good feeling. But the most rewarding is when I came back home and went back to school that next following day to teach. My kids were so inspired. They were like, Miss Goddess, you were modeling and you were in heels and makeup. And I was like, yes. And they started to, feel that confidence. So that's kind of led to me stepping out even more. And I said, you know what? I'm a enter this beauty pageant. I worked in behind the scenes for 2 years, but in 2022, I decided, I'm going to enter the pageant. And I did. And I ended up not just entering it, I ended up winning the pageant. And in that year of me winning the pageant, it was such a historical year because my goal was, I felt like this pageant was amazing. And I heard about Miss America, and I hear about Miss this, Miss that. But I noticed no one really knew what this pageant was and what it represented. And that was my goal. I wanted the world to see that this was a pageant that deserved to show the beauty, the boldness, and the empowerment. So I started my embark. I was speaking. I spoke at the Ultimate Women's Expo in New Jersey, where I got to meet one of my icons, Fantasia Barrino, at the time, that was her name. She's a singer who won on American Idol. And she was just amazing and empowering in my life. And to meet her, to speak on the same stage with her, and for her to tell me how I inspired her, I thought, and we can talk about how we're great and we're phenomenal being blind, but I want to show the world that to give those stories from people who are not. So during my reign of winning the title that year, I started, one of the things we had to do as a title holder was a live. So I decided I wanted to do a live, and it was going to be a podcast. It started off as being called Diva Time because my title I won was Miss Blind Diva Empowerment Pageant. And I would bring different people on, different stories, whether they were celebrities I had met, because within that year, I had not just traveled and spoke, but I used my life of formerly being at once a problem and in gangs. And I wanted to show, one of my platforms was youth crime prevention, and using stories of people who came from that lifestyle to empower our young people to stop the gang and gun violence. So I actually embarked on becoming a credible messenger mentor, which is a national mentor under Clinton Lacey out of Washington, D.C., where we travel nationally and globally speaking at youth events, going into juvenile detention centers, and working with youth to prevent just that. And so that led me to making history as becoming one of the first ever legally blind certified credible messenger mentors. And I got to travel with a team of 12 different mentors from various backgrounds, which led to us, Muhammad Ali Jr.'s only biological son. Floyd Mayweather ended up having me a part of his documentary because within the Credible Messengers, there's the Gloves Up, Guns Down program where they use boxing and MMA as a way to teach skilled tactical fighting to lead to championship fights and fighting in. Some of them have been to the Olympics and championship titles that they hold now. And I wanted to defend myself while being blind because I had, like I stated, become a victim of domestic violence. And I wanted to still feel like I could defend myself. So they taught me and I worked with them, and that landed me when we went and did a youth event. I met Floyd Mayweather and I got to talk with him and hit mitts with him. But I was making all this light because people were seeing this blind woman and she's with boxers and I was with singers and celebrities and I'm all over the place and I'm in the community. But that's what I wanted to show because there are people that are doing this every day. And I did traveled and I was able to go over to Uganda and as a beauty title holder and bring canes and assistive devices and non-perishable food items as a humanitarian, which landed me to get a U.S. ambassadorship for the blind and visually impaired. Um, in 2023, I was able to go to Cameroon. I was able to go to Liberia and Uganda, providing resources, teachings, and helpful resources for the villages and the people who live there who were blind and visually impaired. That landed me in Orlando. I was able to work directly with our mayor and his task force, working with the youth, doing disability training, making things accessible for people who are blind and visually impaired. I developed a parenting preparation manual that was used at the hospitals to help nurses assist women who are blind and visually impaired, how to breastfeed, how to assist them with these techniques because it's different when you're someone who's blind and visually impaired. There's different ways that they have to show you things and they didn't know because for me, I was one and I was able to teach them from my prior nursing background. So I had my hands in a little bit of everything. So within my reign in 2022 to 20, I did all this stuff. I was boxing. I was in, on big stages with celebrities. I was modeling in fashion shows. And then I received a lot of praise, but even in the blindness community, it was like negativity because sometimes it's like the sighted community is like, oh, we don't, or, oh, you shouldn't do this, or why is she? And I'm just like, you know, I don't support division, so it was like, I want to show that I was a real life person that happened to become blind. And just because I became blind, that doesn't mean I cannot still be out in the community and help with causes that I want to help with. So I didn't necessarily get the support in the blind community with what I was doing because I was looked at as a renegade or she's with gang members and she's doing this, but they didn't realize that I was representing regular people too. You can't just, separate. And so, but I was doing things that weren't done by anyone who was blind. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to listen. I'm going to keep on going. So then I love pageantry. So I started entering pageants that I just believed in. And I ended up entering the Miss Black America Elegant Diva pageant, which was a pageant that was never ever won by anyone who was blind. And I won that in 2023, and I was proud to hold that title. And then I went on to compete in the Crown of America for South Florida in 2024, and I won that title, and that was never won by anyone who was blind. And I was so happy because in these two pageants, I was the only person who was blind, but I was someone that they could know they can get to get introduced to, that it was a world that would open up possibilities and inclusiveness. And I was proud of that. Which led me to becoming voted top most influential women of 2023 and 24. And I was so very honored for that, because I'm just like, you never know who's watching. And then to have this select magazine reach out to me, and I came and I accepted that award, and I've been on radio stations. I've traveled. I was just like, I was thankful because I could show everyone that the people who knew me before, the people who knew my story, it was people that I could relate to and get inspiration through my podcast, bringing so many different people, sharing their stories. The ones who are blind, who are from these different aspects, these different dynamics, it was empowering and I loved it. And when my Mayor Jerry Deming out of Orlando, Florida, gave me my proclamation on October 10th of 2023 to get my own day and to have Blind Awareness Month recognized because of all the accomplishments I had made there in Florida, it was an honor. And I was so proud and thankful. And I had to relocate, and I moved to here to Columbia, South Carolina. And since then, I started my own nonprofit organization, Queens Raising Queens. I was able to start a male organization, Kings Raising Kings. They're both 501c3 organizations, various different type of inclusive things that we do with our organization, events. And then I still wanted to be able, I love fashion, but I got tired of having to use apps when I went into the store to read or use people. I was in these fashion shows. I have walked in New York Fashion Week. I walked in Orlando Fashion Week, but I wanted to have something that represented us, who we were. So a lot of times, like I tell people, we don't get a room at the table. And sometimes no matter what, you have to I bring my own table. And so that's what I did. I wanted to start my own fashion line, but I wanted to represent who I was as a person who was proud to be blind, but I love Braille. And I felt like Braille is our language. And I said I can incorporate the two. So I came up with the Crown and Color collection, which is an active wear and a gown line, of course. And being a beauty pageant title holder, I love gowns. Everyone knows I love to sparkle, shine, glimmer. And so, I did just that. I came up with the activewear line, which features t-shirts, sweatsuits, tank tops, workout suits, but it's inspirational messages. Like for me, I have FIGHT, which stands for Faith is Getting Her Through, and it has the word as an acronym, but in Braille, it has the words that say Faith is Getting Her Through, and it's accents with iridescent rhinestones so you can feel it, the tactileness to read what you're wearing on the sizes. You know if it's a small, medium, large. You know if it's a size 2, 3, 4. It's a brand that's made for us, by us, so we can go in the store, and when you see it's a Mystique Fashions, you know it's activewear, it's clothing that you can read, that you can feel empowered. And that landed me to doing a fashion show at the infamous Koger Center here in Columbia, South Carolina. I made it on the front page of the paper, and now they contacted me, and they at LA Fashion Week, LA Fashion Closet, and they extended me the opportunity to, now I'll be the first legally blind designer to debut my full collection at LA Fashion Week on October 26th. For LA Fashion Closet, featuring blind, visually impaired, hearing impaired, all different ability models on that stage. And I'm truly just grateful for that. And just coming back from Chicago, as I spoke on before, where I was from, my life coming from, and I was able to go back to that same city. Just came back on September the 13th. I was able to receive the first ever legally blind African American woman to receive a Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award, to stand on that stage in the same city where my family name was known for so much tragedy and heartache, but now to make history, to be the first to kind of rewrite that, to show that this is where I came from. And even though life gave me obstacles, even though I became blind, despite it all, I am a professional motivational speaker, a U.S. ambassador, a humanitarian. I have my own day. I hold 5 beauty pageant titles. I have my own organizations, my own business. And I did it all without my sight. And I never gave up, no matter what it was. And I could show them that if he could do it for me, he could do it for you. I didn't get accepted all of the time. I was different, not even in my blind community. I had to, walk alone. I had to walk away, but I still stood by my principle and what I believe in. And even on today, that's why I renamed my podcast this year, The Legacy of Vision, because my blindness was never an inability. It became a capability to allow me to do anything I set my mind to do. I learned how it took me to lose my physical sight to really gain my vision. And I learned the power of being able to be a leader, being able to stand on my own. And I have a legacy now that I could look back and leave behind. When they look up my name, they'll no longer just see that I'm the daughter of a murderer or a sister of a murderer. I am someone who has made a difference, made a change. I have accolades that I'm proud of, not by boasting, but because I earned them. And I did them all a lot standing on my own. So when you ask who I am Goddess Mystique Johnson, someone who came into this world as a product of her environment, but now I am prospering a new legacy to make a change and to show that anything is possible through faith and determination. Thank you.
You're very welcome. For those of you who have forgotten what you're listening to, as we always like to say, first of all, my name's Aaron Richmond, in case anybody out there has forgotten what podcast this is. And this is Aaron's opinion. I first have to tell you that I must tell you something that will be very disappointing to you, Goddess. I have never won a beauty pageant in my life, and I was always confused why. I just don't understand that. But I will tell you point blank that I always, after we have a serious conversation, you know me, I always have to add a little bit of sweet humor there. First of all, my name's Aaron's opinion. I support your message. Holy moly. By the way, where to begin? What can I say? Because you've just nailed it. I can't express it any other way. I've been doing this for 5 years. I did have Crystal Allen on the show, Eyes Like Mine Incorporated. She's a lovely friend.
Yes.
To many people. She was on the show about 4 years ago. So I don't speak to her much really, but either way, she's doing great stuff. And yes, I know what Eyes Like Mine Incorporated is. It's an incredible organization that's providing so much, for so many people. All of those things are really, 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 really fascinating. They truly are. Something that I'm suspicious of is, although you are a blind person now, you speak with such a level of comfort and such a level of wisdom and such a level of kindness and confidence. Has anybody ever told you, Goddess, that whether you were blinded by an accident or not, has anyone told you that you would have been successful regardless of your blindness? Because I'm darkly suspicious that you're just the type of person who would have been who is successful no matter what. I mean, you obviously have such a successful personality. I would wonder, have you ever given any intellectual pondering? Have you ever digested the thought that, if you had never been blinded, if you had never become blind, would you ever have become a successful model and overall a successful person? Have you ever given any thought to that? Because I suspect that you would be successful regardless, just based on your spirit and your personality. What do you think about that, for one thing?
Honestly, I have. I've gotten asked that question before, and I'm gonna be completely honest. I believe I would have been successful financially as far as the career path that I was on, being in medical, but I don't, because I was not this person. Believe it or not, I wasn't your glamour girl. I wasn't sure. I really wasn't. I know people hear me say that and it's hard to believe, but if this wouldn't have happened, I don't think it would have gave me a boldness to want to explore so much, because my sole purpose with getting into fashion and pageantry and all of it was to be an example for my younger girls that I was working with that didn't have that confidence, Aaron, that didn't feel beautiful, that I just didn't want them, to be honest, to end up like me. I didn't want them to feel like they had to stay in anything. I wanted to show them confidence even while I was learning it myself, if that's easy for to understand.
It is. I totally understand what you mean there. Yeah. So you kind of felt in a way that you sort of intellectually became who you are now based on the compilation of all of this challenge that you've
Right.
been through. By the way, another thing that I wanted to certainly say, thank you for your service. I knew that you were in the service, by the way, whether you told me or not. I could tell by the way you addressed me at
Right.
first. Good morning, Mr. Richmond. And I had
Yes.
a feeling that you were. Didn't know for sure one way or the other, but that's not at all surprising. Yeah. What now when you were in the service, are you able to share with me if you got to travel overseas? I mean, in general, you were in for 10 years. Did you serve overseas at all in the army?
Yes, I was actually overseas. I was in Germany at Kaiserslautern, Vogtway Army base in Kaiserslautern, Germany. So I was over there. I was in medical. So I did do a lot of traveling within the U.S., but basically, Germany was where I was at, as far as overseas during my time.
Good, good. And in general, what section of work were you doing? Were you doing medical stuff in the army
Yes, I
in
was.
general?
Yes.
Okay.
Hmm.
So good. So yeah, so you've done a lot of nursing work too. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Hmm. The other aspect and the other angle of all of it is, and I'm sure you know better than I, that a very high percentage of blind people not only have issues when interacting with medical staff at medical practices, but a lot of blind people then, because of that, don't seek medical care. I'm sure you've done some things with this, and I'm sure you've done a lot with this. What have you done to not only educate medical professionals how to treat blind people appropriately, but what do you do to help blind people access medical care appropriately? Because it's a two-way street.
It is. And I'm very direct and straightforward when I come, because a lot of times it's easy to complain and make excuses, but you have to take control of your own situation. And that's what I teach when I'm dealing with people in my community, even as a mentor, because I had to learn how to advocate for myself, even in the medical aspect. That's why I ended up working with the nurses in Orlando, because when I was pregnant with my daughter, I felt that when they were trying to do things like breastfeeding, teaching me how to latch on with my daughter, the techniques were someone coming from sighted. But since I had the medical background and I knew how, I could show them how to incorporate how to work with me, which would then lead them to be able to work with someone else. If they have a little boy and he's circumcised, and when you have to, there's certain things you have to be able to teach, but you have to do it in a way where it's conclusive for someone without sight. So, as for myself, working with moms who were blind and visually impaired, I do classes and prepare them. I teach them this is how you are allowed to advocate for yourself, to help them help teach you and help you the way that you can learn, whether it be birthing classes, working with people who do the classes there in Orlando with things. Also, what resources, having their insurance, knowing what's covered. I am a person that believes in giving resources. I have blogs where I give out resources. That's something I do through my organization as well. But I just teach how to use your voice. And a lot of times we don't utilize our voice enough. And it's not anything wrong with saying, I don't know, but can you tell me what I am able to do? What can I get? And then do your research as well. So I try to just educate on the power of using your voice. Advocating is very important.
And advocating appropriately is important. And there is a difference from advocating appropriately to advocating not appropriately. And that's a very subtle thing. Yeah, really. Really spectacular. Absolutely. So your organization, let's go back to something. I mean, there's just so much to dive into, so much to digest and internalize here. But so Kings for Kings, your nonprofit Kings for Kings. So, most of your interest obviously is women, and I totally get that. That's wonderful, beautiful. But so what do you do for men? What does Kings for Kings do?
So what we with of course with Queens Raising Queens, that's dealing with women of all ages from older to younger women. We have all different programs and resources for both as well as for women with disabilities and without. Both of my organizations are inclusive. With King, the same thing. We have various things. That's actually, I am the VP. It's founded by my son. I'll be getting married on the 21st Sunday, guys. So my my husband's over that. So what we do is the same thing. We have entrepreneurship programs that we do. We do resource fairs. We have poetry. They become authors, designer programs. We have a youth mentoring program, scholarship programs, workshops, counseling, training. We do a wide range of all types of the same things, with the same exact resources and programs we do for the women, we do for the men. And like I said, we work with both dynamics. The only thing is we also have a specific outlet with the males that we deal with. We have the reentry programs and we're readapting them back into society and things of that nature. We have that component as well. So our organizations cover it all.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. That's really incredible. Have you ever spoken, I'd be shocked if you didn't know who it was. Have you ever spoken with Kevin Dobie Coachman?
No, I have not.
Oh, he has a very, we'll connect off here, but he was also on the show and he has a very similar story to yours in many ways. Anyway, very similar story. Anyway, that is really incredible. So another thing to really, dig into the hard questions here. So and you went through a lot, by the way, which is an incredible, and you went through an incredible amount of information. But so your siblings, to whom I believe you said were incarcerated, correct?
Hmm.
Right.
Yes.
So I'm sure you've been asked this question only a million times. So I guess the best way to phrase it is, have you ever contacted them? And since, now in the present day, have you ever contacted them? And, what do you know about, intellectually their journey? Do you ever, have ideas about that? Do you think they'll change? What do you know about their journey that they have been through?
So that's a great question. Yes, I do get asked that and it's no problem. So my mother passed away. She's no longer living. Since then, my brother committed suicide in 2020.
Ugh.
So he's no longer here. I have one of my brothers is still living. He's still, of course, incarcerated. We talk. We have a good relationship. He has, of course, he was a juvenile when he was incarcerated. He just turned 40, 42 on August 31st. So, he, is definitely not the same like he was then. He's very proud of all that I have accomplished, all that I've done. He has, became a person now that understands what he did, has grown, and I'm proud of him. As far as my father, I do not have a relationship with him at all. I can't really tell you any update on him. But other than that, of course, my sister, I lost her in an accident, as I shared with you. So as for that, for me, with all of that, it's just important to me to continue to live out the new legacy for my family. I kind of rewrote it. My son now was the first to graduate college, high school. I have a daughter. She's 14, just started high school. I do have two nephews. I'm very proud of them. I have another net. So it's like those are the ones now who I just try to continue on and let them know that the kind of new legacy that their aunt has left for them, because
Absolutely.
all they have, right?
Absolutely. Beautiful answer. Beautiful, Bill. Yeah, because there's so much, there's so much debate within society, as you know, about criminal justice reform. I mean, that's a whole nother episode, but there's so much debate about that. When people
Hmm.
are incarcerated as juveniles and the ethical nature, the philosophy, the criminal justice, that's a whole up, left, right, down, hot. That's a whole story there for
Yes,
sure.
sir. Hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the other thing, how long have you been podcasting? Because your posts basically tinkled into my feed very, very recently. So how long have you been posting on social media? By the way, I never knew you existed. And it's not because I don't care. It's just because, as you know, we are drowned by information.
Yes,
So
yes.
how long have you been posting on social media, by the way?
Wow. Well, I have been on social media for well over 20 years. However, I I have my podcast started back in 2022, October of 2022, which is when I won. Let me get you the date. October 6th of 2022 is when I won Miss Blind Diva Empowerment Pageant. And as I stated, it started off as a requirement of winning the title. We had to do a live on Facebook as a title holder. And it started off in 2022 as Diva Time. That was the name of the podcast. So from 2022 to October of 2023, it was Diva Time. And then I transitioned over to the Legacy of Vision podcast. So I've been doing my podcast since 2022. So, and I have interviewed, I've kept track, over 372 guests. And I am excited because it's been from all different backgrounds, unsung heroes, you name it, have been on the show, celebrities, even international. I try to bring on and share voices and share stories because people never know. You know what I mean? They never know how you can be touched from someone's story.
Yeah, absolutely. And you never know where these conversations land. I think it's fascinating that I've never heard of you,
Yeah.
but also beautiful that I know you. So
Yes.
that's the irony of all these things. Well, trust me. In case you're wondering, this episode will be internationally known because we at Aaron's Opinion, we have a tremendous following of people from all over the world who tune into this. And yeah, when you mentioned Crystal Allen, I know about the beauty pageant there. I really think, as odd as it is to hear this, um, coming from a man saying this, I think the generally on one hand, I would say I'm not a fan of beauty pageants except for the ones that are in good taste and promote the right thing, and that's what Crystal
Absolutely.
Allen does. So I think it's something that's a little odd, but it is doing the right thing. It is in good faith, is what I'm saying. So I think that's
Yes.
it's a really good program for women and people who need to get out there professionally, and
And
it's so cool. Yeah,
absolutely, Aaron. And one thing I wanted to say about that, because
sure.
Crystal Allen, one thing that kind of stuck out to me about her pageant is it's not just that. It's not your typical beauty pageant, because it's not really a beauty pageant. It's an empowerment pageant. It's women who are, yes, blind, visually impaired. However, the pageant is about empowerment. There's the beauty, of course, but there's components in her pageant in which you're displaying your skills, your empowerment. So that's what stuck out about her pageant, as though she was showing that beauty comes in all backgrounds, shapes, sizes. And it's an empowerment because we see from our inside, right? Not outerly. And I felt like her pageant made it a difference, which attracted me to want to be in it, because it didn't just glorify beauty in one. You get what I'm saying? So I
Yes.
think that's dynamic about what she does. And then when she gave me the opportunity. Not just did I win the pageant, but I had the honor of being one of the first ever legally blind pageant directors of the pageant in 2023 to 2024. And the reason why I took that title was because of just that. I could represent something that empowered, because who is anyone to say what beauty is? So I think that's what to me, I always want to say about Eyes Like Mine, and for any women who are out there that are blind, visually impaired, whether you're newly coming in or experienced, you want to feel, be a part of it because it does give you an empowerment. It's not just about your typical stereotypical beauty pageant.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. So the other question, as we move to some of the famous questions, or some of the well-known, rather, some of the well-known questions that I use to walk gently towards the end of a truly fascinating and beautiful, just such a fun conversation.
Yes, sir.
The other thing that stands out to me, you're just so easy to you're so overly easy to understand in such a deep and meaningful way. That's what you really stand out to me. You truly do. You're just so fun to talk to, so
Thank
relatable.
you.
You know,
Thank you.
I wish more people had known of you now, and I'm glad that the world knows of you now because
Yes,
you're just doing the right thing. So before I contacted you, had you ever heard of an Aaron Richmond or an Aaron's Opinion before I contacted you?
no, sir, I really didn't. I didn't. And like you said, it's just because it's so much that transpired. And I'm not going to lie, so much comes into,
Too
on my
much.
pages or,
Too much
on
comes
my
in, you
time. I
mean
got
too
like,
much.
so I feel like I do believe in divine connection and
Mm-hmm.
everything happens in its own timing for the right reason. And so,
100%.
yes, sir.
No question. So, what do you really want to know about Aaron Richmond and Aaron's Opinion? I mean, and when I tell you that I've covered it all on this thing, so really get under my skin, really make me sweat. What do you really want to know?
Honestly, when we talked on the phone and you gave me the overview of it, you explained it very well. But I am just interested to know what gave you the kind of boldness to be able to want to step out, to bring a platform, to be able to talk about those topics that most people kind of tether with, especially in the blind community. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. A lot of times people are scared because you won't get the following or the backing from the bigger organizations. You get what I'm saying? So
Well, sort of,
people
yeah. Mm-hmm.
people if not, I can mainly, why were you not afraid to bring this platform and be open to sharing people's opinions and boldly giving yours and not being afraid of any feedback, I guess is what I can say.
Well, I guess I can answer. Well, after I had never won beauty pageants and after I had lost so many beauty pageants in my own beautiful life, I realized that there needed to be, some other things that I could possibly do. So I will tell you that in case you don't know, the name's Aaron Richmond. I was born in 1991. I forget, you're a few years older than me, I believe.
Hmm.
So I was born in 91. Born with glaucoma and a congenital heart defect. My whole life was immersed, drowned in audio from day one, right? So I was always that kid that was listening to books on tape. My fondest memory of my childhood was my mother read the Harry Potter books to me when I was a little boy in the 90s. And so my whole life has been drowned in social media and drowned in audio. And then I always listened to podcasts around the blindness space and listen. I'm also a teacher, by the way. I teach English as a second language. And in my whole life, I loved giving speeches. Like nothing made me happier than to be a public speaker. It just makes me happy. So I just want to talk. Around the year 2020, there was this little thing, I don't know if you noticed, called a pandemic. And I was at home. It was just like for you, it was incredibly depressing because my guide dog was in the later stages, the last couple months of her life. And yeah, that was a crazy year. And so, so what happened was I was listening to podcasts around the blindness space, but they just were not open to my opinions. And I created Aaron's Opinion so that anybody, and when I mean anybody, I really mean anybody. Mostly blind people have been on the show, but I've interviewed other people with disabilities, other
Right.
intellectual disabilities, people with cerebral palsy have been on the show a couple of times, and sighted people, and really anybody. Because I believe that the greatest thing and the greatest gift that I can give you is the chance for you to be more successful than me. So
Absolutely.
that's what I hope, as I have a theory that the greatest compliment that I can receive is knowing that I helped Goddess to outdo me.
Absolutely.
Records and numbers are not meant to be boasted about. They're meant to be beat and they're meant to be celebrated together. So I
That's
created
right.
Aaron's Opinion just to give you a chance to share your story and to learn with me, learn with us, learn with the listeners around the world. And
Absolutely.
I gotta tell you, that was a lot. So why am I not afraid? Because I'm determined to help other people. As I say,
Love it.
I'm determined to help one person today and 1 million people tomorrow. That's the
Love
answer.
it.
Never
Thank
afraid.
you.
Never
That's
afraid. And never
that's
afraid
it.
and always ready. And so there you go. I just have to say, if you want to, leave us with some parting words, and then I'll say, how can people get in touch after they hear this blast? How can they get in touch with you?
Of course, of course. Well, my parting words would be just that, I feel like my blindness became my superpower because being able to take away my physical sight didn't allow me to see objection, didn't
Hmm.
allow me to see doubt, didn't allow me to even have fear. I could be bold to now be okay with giving goddesses story, giving Goddess's perspective, my opinion boldly. And I'll say with that, it doesn't matter what you feel may not be accepted. Never allow anyone to set limitations on you that you do not set for yourself. And with that being said, I am a very easy person to get in contact with. I am on all social media platforms. My Facebook is my first name is really Goddess, so it's Goddest. New Way, that's all together. Newway Jenkins, Jenkins. I do have a Instagram page, which is the real. Put a period in Goddess. So Thereal period Goddest. My website is under Queens Raising Queens, inc25 at gmail.com. That's my email
Email.
address.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
no worries.
I'm like,
As we
okay,
say in the business,
that's
this is where we say in the business, click the link in the description for more information.
there you go.
There
He
you
got
go.
my back. Aaron will have all that information in the description for you. And also you can call 803-440-6815. If I don't answer, leave me a text. I refuse to have someone answer for me. I answer my own calls. So just reach out to me directly. Reach out to Aaron. He can feel free to give my contact information. I'm always available. I try to say if you want to be on my podcast, simply shoot me an email to plentypower24 at gmail.com. And I'm definitely going to be sending a lot of people your way, Aaron.
Absolutely. You know what? We're definitely going to be talking off air because there's a lot of people that I want you to interview, and there's a lot of other people that I want to interview. So we're definitely going to be
Yes,
connecting
sir.
off air. Man, oh man, oh man. Goddess, it was an absolute honor. And all I can wish for you, and of course, if you can stay on the line for maybe 30 seconds after this, but
Of course. Yes,
all
sir.
I can say is, look, all I want for you is to be happier than me and more successful than me. And then the whole world will be appreciative. All right, everybody. Wow, that was a blast. She's Goddess. I'm Aaron's Opinion. And of course, as we say on Aaron's Opinion, be well, everybody, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Help one person today. Help 1 million people tomorrow.